This is Talk Time. The governor of Ebonyi State, David Umahi of the PDP, will know very soon if he'll continue in office or have his election upturned. The Labour Party LP is challenging the results of the election that brought him to office. Both the State Elections Petitions Tribunal and the Appeal Court had upheld Umahi's election, but the Labour Party is now at the Supreme Court. Councils of the PDP and LP will adopt their written addresses tomorrow. That's Wednesday, after which a judgment date will be fixed. We'll take a break and be back with our guest. Right, joining me live from Abuja is a lawyer, Edwin Inegedu. Welcome, good to have you on the show. We're looking at the Ebonyi State, political brouhaha and hoping that this will be settled as quickly as possible. Now, it is curious to start with. The Labour Party initially did not have any qualms about David Umahi's victory at the elections. Why this U-turn?
The point as it stands is it's about the interest of all the parties, and particularly for the fact that they feel that even initially they might not have a position, but gradually they do have a position which they think they can equally push for and see how it turns out for them. The law does not prohibit them from having a U-turn, so they can decide to challenge the position at any point in time.
But the Court of Appeal sitting in Enugu did throw out Nkwegu's appeal, that is the Labour Party candidate in the governorship election there in Ebonyi, for being functionally useless and lacking in merit. And it was almost the same case with the tribunal that actually threw out the case. So what chance does he stand with going to the Supreme Court now?
Well, the right of appeal is constitutional.
Mm-hmm.
So in that regard, if they feel that there's any aspect of that decision which they are not comfortable with or which they think they can question, the law allows them to go to the Supreme Court. As regards the chances of success at the Supreme Court, well, that depends on what their case really is. Because it's and most times if they feel that they have a strong case, it is better for them to test it at the Supreme Court. That is the position of the law.
Indeed. Now, the chairman of the court, Theresa Alabi, that's the chairman of the tribunal, ruled initially that it was unconstitutional for this gentleman, Nkwegu, to bring an additional 46 witnesses after initially bringing 6 witnesses. Of course, the bone of contention here was that 6 witnesses could hardly really give a clear representation of what happened in all 20 local governments in Ebonyi State. So just, unravel this for us. What exactly are the implications here? Because she says it is unconstitutional for him to bring an additional 46 witnesses.
Well, as it stands, I think it's a bit vague for the court to maintain that it is unconstitutional, because the issue of witnesses strictly goes down to that of evidence. It has nothing to do with the Constitution. So if the court has said that, I think I do not know how to place that as it stands, because but as it is, the election petition tribunals are bound by rules or by their own separate rules. And if at the time for settlement of pleadings has passed, it will be very difficult for any party to intend to bring new documents or new witnesses. So I do think and I do believe that might have been the situation there, because there's a time frame for the parties to file their documents, to state the number of witnesses they want to call, and after that period of time, you can no longer amend. So if they want to amend after that period of time, then definitely I do not think the court will allow them come in at that point in time.
But this
But the issue
Nkwegu,
of whether being a constitutional or otherwise, I think it's different. Yeah.
the
That's a
LP,
different issue
the
entirely.
Labour Party candidate, Mr. Nkwegu, was said not to have even participated in the elections in the first place.
Yeah.
Did you get my question?
Please, I will let you take that again.
Yes, Mr. Nkwegu was said not to have participated in this
I would want you
election.
to take that again.
Yeah, I'm doing just that. He's said that the LP candidate was said not to have participated in the election, and he's asking that this election be upturned, and he's actually calling for a re-election, saying that there were wide irregularities according to him. But he was not even part of the election in the first place. What does this mean?
If he was not part of the elections at all, he did not take part in the substantive election itself, then definitely he stands a very, very slim chance of even maintaining that action, because Section 137, 188 of the Electoral Act is very express to the fact that it is only someone who has participated in that election who has grounds against the election that can complain, or maybe a political party that or its candidate has been excluded. Those, they can complain. There are those who can bring the action. But for somebody who has not participated in the election at all, and his party is not complaining that they've been excluded unlawfully by INEC, I think it's dead on arrival. But like we always say, you cannot, you can never say never, because you can't. We do not really know what the basic grounds for them is. But if he has not participated in that election, then it will be a very tall task for him to even maintain the action in the first place.
Especially when you consider the fact that he actually, that is Nkwegu, the LP candidate, congratulated David Umahi of the PDP, congratulating him on his victory at the elections. So what could have changed, that would make him decide to go to court, not just the tribunal or the appeal court, but now to the Supreme Court?
Well, you see, like I said in my opening statement, it's about the interest of various parties. We've had instances where people have congratulated the winners and make U-turn to go back to court to challenge them. I think at that point, it depends whether there's a congratulatory message or not, does not affect the position of the law itself regulating elections. If a party feels, even after congratulating the winner, he feels he has a grouse or he has a ground of complaint against the election, they can go ahead and complain that. But the circumstances here, because in the long run, it might be that the party itself sat down and decided to challenge the election. So at that point, the interest or the action of the individual becomes very, very irrelevant and of no moment.
Is there a possibility that because of the prevailing situation there in Ebonyi, where the PDP seems to be imploding, I mean, you have some 10 members of the 20 or 24-man state assembly that have defected to the LP, and they believe that, well, they may stand some chance, in actually getting the top job, which is the governorship of the state? As it stands now, it's mere conjectures and calculations on the part of all of the parties. And I do think that personally, I think that part of the reason why some of these persons are getting very comfortable with some of these actions is because people feel they can manipulate the provisions of the law. But as it stands, even if people defect from PDP or APC to Labour Party as it stands, it is of little moment, because the election itself has already taken place. What is being challenged itself are fallouts from the elections. So I do not think that these present or current actions of defection will have any basic input or capacity of
influencing the outcome of that election as it stands, because they can no longer present new facts in any of these courts, and it becomes the case they've presented at the Election Petition Tribunal remains the case. They will argue, or they argued at the Court of Appeal. They cannot go outside of it in the Supreme Court as well. So whether there are defections, there are no defections, whether they want to bring in new persons into it, it does not change the balance of the case, the facts before the court. That still remains the position of the law.
What are the implications of this really for our democracy? You know, some have actually said, look, this is a waste of time, especially a waste of time of the Supreme Court that is already burdened with so many election cases. What is your take on this?
In as much as my personal view actually is to the effect that some cases don't even need to go to court in the first place. More or less talking of them getting to the Supreme Court. There are some of these cases that people are sure of the positions of the law. They know what the outcome will look like, but they feel, okay, well, there's a constitutional right to access our courts. So if there's that right, pursuant to Section 66 of the Constitution, let us exercise it. And the court on its own too cannot shut people out because they feel or think that there's really no strong case or any need for them to try to do that. Because if you try to stop them from going to court, it becomes a constitutional issue as well. So they have the right to go to court. But in my personal view and opinion, I do not think the courts need to be bogged down with unnecessary action suits that definitely will not see the light of day. That is my personal opinion on this.
Is our democracy then endangered where you have the judiciary actually, well, by default or you know, whatever, taking the place of the electorate, who are the ones who really should decide who should govern them at every level?
Well, the point is that I think it's part of the growth of our democracy as well. We've had the courts make pronouncements that have opened up spaces or interpretations of the laws in various aspects that people have maintained very close minds to them. But having said that too, the huge cost of litigation that comes with these election petition tribunals, and then as well, election petition cases, as well as the number of these cases that are penned before the courts. While I agree it is good for our democracy, I equally think some of them are mere distractions that could be easily avoided if politicians and political parties decide to put on a toga of sportsmanship in these regards. It is not every situation you lose a case that you must go to court. Some of these things are very clear. We have instances where people knew they did not win the elections. But let us go to court and try and see if we can upturn it or seek for another bite at the cherry, a conduct of another new elections. So we keep having it, it's a cycle that will keep going around until the courts come down hard on some of these parties as well. That is what I think about that situation.
And that seems to be the challenge here. The courts don't seem to be doing that, coming down on these political parties in your own words. So that means the judiciary has to step up its game. And are you seeing that, I mean, with this judiciary right now and with what has been playing out so far?
Yes, exactly. That's my point, because the judiciary needs to step up with games and be firm in some of these aspects. Because I cannot remember the case exactly, but I remember there was a case the Supreme Court slammed cost on the parties themselves, even the lawyers for coming to court with that kind of actions in the Supreme Court. The point about it is while we have this let me try my luck and see how it turns out for me mentality in all of these election petition cases, had been the fact that we've had divergent positions of the law stated by the Court of Appeal in most of these instances. In one of these cases, you find the court said, well, you're qualified to participate in these circumstances. In another instance, it says you are not qualified to participate in these circumstances. And when the position of the law is not straight, is not certain for everyone going to court to be sure that this is what the court is going to say, then it leaves a room for a lot of uncertainties and a lot of persons to just jump into the fray in the hope that with luck or by chance, the court might decide in my favor. So that is the point I made by saying, look, the court needs to be firm and the court needs to maintain common positions of law so that if people are going to court, you actually know that, look, it's dead on arrival on this particular point.
Now, before it even gets to the judiciary...
That's what I meant by that position.
Yes, but before this election cases even get to the law courts, how about the electoral laws themselves? I mean, is there a need... Do you see any loopholes that these politicians may be taking advantage of that's actually working in, for them?
Yeah, well, the point about it is that most of our laws, there are a lot of loopholes in most of our laws, but the point is it's all work in progress. So even in other parts of the world, you cannot get any law that is absolutely, that absolutely captures what the intentions of the lawmakers or that of the electorate or that of the populace will always take. So it's always about substantial. That is why the courts will always say substantial compliance, because you cannot have absolute compliance to laws everywhere, even in the world. So basically, you have instances of who can present an election petition. We have instances of people who have grouses from primaries conducted, but they cannot challenge that at the election petition tribunal because they have been cut off out of it. So if you want to look at the laws, you have a lot of instances. Some persons have complained that, okay, even the use of the permanent voters card amounts to electronic voting. Others said it is not part of it. A lot of things have been up, and a lot of oppositions of that law. It depends on the angle each person is coming from. And that is the beauty of democracy, the beauty of the application of the laws, and the determination of the courts to settle all of these issues. So definitely, yes, there are loopholes, there are lacunas, but like I said, it's all about the application of these laws.
Talk to us. I mean, you are a lawyer, and I'm sure you've looked at the electoral law as it is right now. What are those specifics that you think, going forward, we actually should be taking another look at so that we can make corrections? What are those specifics that you think, going forward, we actually should be taking another look at so that we can make corrections?
Yeah, well, one of the notable ones I always want to look at is the issue of the qualification to contest elections, because the point as it stands is that the Constitution, Section 177, actually provides what qualifies one to contest an election. That is specifically for the opposition of the governor of a state. Now, the Electoral Act on its own too came out with its own position and said, look, this is how a party's primary will be conducted. And if it is not conducted according to these laws, what happens? Now, the Electoral Act itself did not specify what happens where there's non-compliance. But the Act itself says even non-compliance of the Electoral Act itself is not enough. On its own is not enough for an election to be annulled. Now, if you want to look at how these things work out, the Constitution did not provide for how a party would sponsor a candidate. It only said he's a member of a political party and is sponsored by the party. But the Electoral Act goes in depth to state this is how a candidate of a party emerges. But the position of the law as it stands in this moment is that the Supreme Court has said that, look, if you want to disqualify a candidate, it is only contemplated by the provisions of the Constitution and not that of the Electoral Act. Some things need to be done in that regard. Now, we want to look at who can challenge a political party's primary. It is only a member of a political party making it an inter party affair. So, if we want to look at it from that perspective as well, now, if it's a law that made that provision, it's a provision of the law that has been breached by the political party. The Electoral Act made mention of the word shall. So, if a political party fails to